In today's video, the big Russian push, the big offensive, it is here. It is happening right now. Also, massive earthquake. The earthquake of a century in Turkey. Death toll is in the thousands. We haven't seen anything like it for decades. My name is Artur Rehi and I'll be bringing you news from Ukraine and from all over the world. If you enjoy my videos, subscribe to the channel and become a Patreon. Links in the description below. At the end of the video, I'll be butchering some Patreon names for you. We will not be watching a military map because there is no point to it right now because the changes are in the hundreds of meters, not kilometers. But the greatest Russian attacks are happening around Vuhledar and Bakhmut and Svatove. Russians are pushing with infantry and they're using even armor this time and they're losing insane amounts of armor. The first video we're going to watch is straight from Bakhmut. Ukrainian situation there has been getting worse and worse in the past days. Oh.
Hi, voices for Ukraine. Hope you guys doing great, and me too. You can hear.
First of all, I gotta give it to this guy. I mean, there's shells landing. He's in Bakhmut, and he's vibing. He's smiling, and he's doing great, as he says. So I gotta give it to him for keeping up the mood and morale. Thank you, man.
Hear how our artillery working against the enemy's position. We continue fighting, continue stay here near Bakhmut, and our mood is good. Everything is okay. Day by day we fight here while waiting the Western support. I mean tanks and weapons and all this stuff. Still, I continue. Thank you very much, guys, that you interested about what's going on here, what's happening here, and I thank you for your support and for your help in Ukraine to win this war against evil, against zombie. I don't know how to say, they are really zombie. They don't care about the dead soldier. They continue going and going, and it's really like movies about zombie when they don't think, they just go and go and go, and every day many attacks. We destroy them all, and they continue.
That's the result if you brainwash the population to the oblivion. You wouldn't mobilize a Western civilian into an army and make them storm a position without proper gear or training. They would revolt, they would mutiny, but not the Russians. They have been brainwashed to the moon, and they can be used to do this. And even Ukrainians are surprised that they're zombie-like attacks, suicidal attacks, because the Ukrainians are not brainwashed like that.
Continue try to take our position, so we really need good weapons for more effective destroying them all. I wish you a good day, and thank you for support. Thank you for watching this channel.
Thank you, man, for keeping the mood up. It's very important in war. Talking about the renewed Russian offensive, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Russia lost over 1,000 troops, KIA, killed in action in the last 24 hours. This is one of the highest, if not the highest, the entire war of 24 hours. They also lost 14 tanks, which is an entire Western tank battalion. In 24 hours, 28 armored vehicles. Look at this photo. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I count 11 destroyed tanks and armored personnel carriers in one photo in a column. It was possibly a gathering area and Ukrainians just bombarded it with artillery. But this happened at the beginning of war. It happened a little bit in the summer and then it stopped because Russia switched to defensive doctrine. The Tsar's orders, Putin's orders have come in. No more defense. Russian army has to take the entirety of Donbass by 24th of February, 1 year anniversary of the war. This is the Tsar's order. This is why they're pushing like zombies zombies, as is being said, and they use insane amounts of armor again, and it just gets destroyed. Ukraine has a counter weapon for everything Russia has to offer. To illustrate this point further with a video, here is a video of 5 destroyed Russian vehicles. I say vehicles because there are tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and something else. There is one tank that has survived, and the only goal of that tank crew is to get the hell out of there, but unfortunately they get hit in the butt. So the only thing they can do is full throttle with a burning out of there until the fire gets to the cockpit and the tank grinds to a halt. 6 vehicles destroyed in one spot, another gathering area. Now supposedly both of these videos happened around Vuhledar region. Bakhmut and Vuhledar. Russians are pushing very heavily there and they're losing insane amounts of armor and soldiers. United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense released an intelligence update, and I quote, "Russian forces have only managed to gain several hundred meters of territory a week. This is almost certainly because Russia now lacks the munitions and armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles and tanks to carry out a proper offensive. Senior planners of the Russian army likely make plans that require undermanned, inexperienced units to achieve unrealistic goals due to political pressure." And we know what the political pressure is. It is an order from the Tsar. Putin is not connected to the reality that his army simply is not able to make any kind of major offensive. We see localized Russian offensives renewed around Vuhledar, Bakhmut and Svatove, but in my eyes, no big push is coming as we are expecting it in the West, like we saw at the beginning days of war. As much as I gather information right now, I don't see that Russia has even the reserves for it. The big push we're waiting for, it is already happening. These 3 cities, Svatove, Vuhledar and Bakhmut, this is the big push. They're already doing it. They have been doing it for the last 2 weeks. That's the point I want to make in this video, actually, that the big push, either it doesn't exist or this is it. And here is a Ukrainian soldier that shares this viewpoint. Let's watch.
Доброго ранку, Україна. Сьогодні 5 лютого. Друзі, що відбувається? В усіх засобах масової інформації, на всіх інтернет-ресурсах постійно розганяється інформація про те, що буде наступ, там сумасшедший і...
Yes, even Estonian media is crazy about it. They're always talking about this huge offensive, and I've been to television a few times now and to radio, and people ask me to comment about this war. And I say, no, I don't see any big offensive coming. This is it. This is as big as the Russian offensive can and will get. They don't have the capabilities for anything else. This is their capability, what we're seeing. And we're expecting something bigger because we project the Western powers onto Russia, which they don't have.
Якось мимо проходить уваги того, що наступ уже йде. І наступ серйозний в районі Бахмута, там Соледара, Вугледар, на Авдіївку. Все, що було зрозуміло, все, що є боєспособне, вони кинули на цей напрямок. І штурми, і наступ уже він триває. То, що там якийсь відволікаючий маневр буде на інших напрямках, то він, скажімо так, спомагательний, скоріш за все. А на самом деле самі вирішальні бої зараз уже тут і зараз йдуть.
I agree.
Друзі, ситуація там тяжка. Досить таки тяжка. Але
Yes, the situation around Bakhmut is extremely difficult for the Ukrainians. Russians are very close to cutting off Bakhmut and the very vital logistical road supplying Bakhmut. So the situation is not easy for the Ukrainians. And this is the biggest Russian offensive to Bakhmut we have ever seen in this war, going on right now. And there is a very real potential that Ukrainians might have to leave the city. Time will tell.
подивіться мої репортажі іще із вересня місяця. В жодному відео не було сказано, що там щось було легко. Там завжди було тяжко. І наразі тактику, яку вони опробували там в Солідарі, наразі вони застосовують і по лінії зіткнення. То, що бронетехніки мало, м'яса багато. Називай їх хоч десантниками, хоч ні. Немає різниці. Рештки вагнерів, ВДВ лізуть, намагаються продавлювати позиції і перти вперед. Але варіантів особо немає. Потрібно тримати лінію, потрібно їх вимолотити, оцю наволоч, оцих, що вони понабирали, і потім вже можна буде сказати, що ситуація буде мінятися. До цього часу буде тяжкувато.
I've even read from many different analysts what's the strategic or military importance of Bakhmut. There is not much, there is some importance to it, but what seems to be happening is the biggest military importance to Bakhmut for Ukrainians is the fact that Russians are fixated on it. So the biggest thing Ukrainians gain from it is the bleeding out of the Russian army to this city. It is the Verdun of the Ukrainian war. Ukrainians could leave Bakhmut and make a new defensive line, but they hold it to make Russians bleed as long as possible for it. This is how I understand the situation.
Мобілізацію не розганяйте в ЗМІ, там зрадоньку, повістку, де вручають, правильно чи неправильно. Юристів там нещасних, адвокатів повилазило на екрани. Звертайтеся, будемо відмазувати. Да ви в перших рядах маєте стати і піти. Хто? Ви думаєте, напередку легко там сидіти в окопах, мерзнуть, блядь, і немає, ну, щоб і не було заміни. Ким міняти? Якщо ви всі юристи і адвокати, всі на своїх містах відмазуєте граждан за бабки, то, ну, до чого це приведе? Самі перші маєте адвокати, юристи призивати хлопців, щоб стали до лав Збройних сил, і показувати приклад, а не гавкати сидіти із тіктоків і інших платформ, розказувати, як уникнути мобілізації. Це що, повинність? Це обов'язок кожного громадянина України. Уже все.
Ukraine declared another mobilization a few days ago. They will form 6 new assault brigades, but as much as I know, these brigades will be formed out of volunteers only. Ukraine has a lot of volunteers, and now they have the weapons to form these new 6 brigades.
Варіант такий, що або ми їх, або вони нас. Тому думайте, зберігайте спокій, розум свій, положіть на місце там, він, де має бути, якщо він взагалі є. Я розумію, що там страшно і все таке. На війні страху немає, тільки я не знаю в кого, у всіх він є. Але нічого в тому страшного немає, пройшов час і потрібно собі і суспільству, і державі, і світу показати, хто ми є українці. Слава нації, смерть ворогам.
A massive 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Turkey and Syria yesterday. It is the biggest one on the region and almost an earthquake of the century. Confirmed death toll right now is 5,000+, but seeing the destruction of the buildings, we can say it's going to be 10+ in a few days, unfortunately. Estonia will send a rescue team, and so will most of the EU and NATO countries. And so will Russia. Russian team is already present, actually. Ukrainians will also send their team. This earthquake was so deadly, it has Russian and Ukrainian rescue teams working side by side to save the lives of the people under the rubble. And I'm glad that's the case. Victims of this catastrophe need all the help they can get. But to illustrate the schizophrenic nature of Russian propaganda, here is a Russian TV show propagandist discussing the earthquake and whether Russia should help them or send the team to help them. Russia already sent the team immediately, but this is what the propagandists tell to the people. You can see there's a huge conflict between what really happens in Russia and what the propagandists tell to the people. And bear in mind, these propaganda shows are watched by the millions.
Турция – часть западного мира. Турция – это восточный фланг НАТО. И вот вполне себе осознавая это, как-то у меня не складывается картинка, что мы должны встать в общий строй, вот желающих оказать помощь Турецкой Республике и тоже что-то туда отправить в 2 самолетах.
He says that he doesn't understand how Russia should help Turkey because Turkey is part of NATO, so basically part of the enemy for the Russians. I'm heartbroken to listen to this, honestly, because Russian people listen to this. This is part of their media space. They're fed this to be desensitized about these events.
Соболезнования, да, конечно, это по-человечески правильно. Ну, наверное, и все. Ну, логично было бы. Ведь все для фронта, все для победы, все для своих, все для наших, а потом для всех остальных, если останется. А я не уверен в том, что останется.
This is unbelievably cruel from the Russians. I wanted to show you this to illustrate how schizophrenic is the Russian media space. They tell one thing and then the state does the other thing. Even the state and the propaganda shows don't agree with each other. Look at this, a beautiful sight. Ukrainian handmade drones that will drop these munitions to infantry and onto infantry fighter vehicles and tanks. These are no hand grenades, these are bigger, twice the size. And they sting hard. They're not big enough to explode armored vehicles, but they definitely do damage to optics and sights. If I'd be a Russian soldier, I'd be terrified to see this video. Because they'll be flying above. And you don't see them, you don't hear them until the munition explodes right in front of you. France was able to triple Caesar howitzer production rates. During peaceful times, the production rates of a Caesar howitzer was just 2 howitzers per month. It's a very slow production. Manufacturing military equipment is not the same line work as producing consumer cars. A lot of specialized equipment is needed. Plus, there is usually only a very limited supply of parts in storage. If you want to up the production, you gotta change the entire production line from the bottom up. Until today, France has provided 18 Caesar howitzers for Ukraine. Additional 19 units originally planned to be sent to Denmark will now be rerouted and sent to Ukraine. That is the support of the Danish government. That's not an isolated event in Europe. Every military company that exists on European soil is somehow putting effort into increasing their production, whatever they are producing. Every European military is buying gear, weapons, ammunition, because this war is really a wake-up call. In previous videos I've talked about how Putin is mobilizing the minorities to Russianize Russia. We have another example of it, of minorities mobilized from Tuva Republic in Russia. They speak Russian language with a very thick accent. It's very hard to understand. And they complain about being bullied.
Аңа бисти передовой жегерер кылдыр палатка пөретпен биске комендантск батальон борслер дейс 100 ката полигон кирген декабрь 29 Донецк хоройда денерде турар бис самдоз истинде передовойда эгезинде бисти новыйга камарырлар үчүн достугар батальонга деп турган военный билет артында 110 достугар полк 95-380 деп бизиккан таңбалаган комбатыбыз полковник Степанов Евгений Александрович турган. This
is not an isolated event that Russian units have no commander, because Russia really lacks low and medium level commanders. You cannot mass produce them fast. It takes time. And the beginning months of war were deadly for Russian commanders like that. I remember reporting a lot of deaths. More than any Su-30 or Ka-52. If Russia loses medium level commanders, these are even harder to replace. The Russian forces are seriously under-led.
This time the Noitalo in the bis. 13 günü ya çeyirbi sılda dener военный улус бисте улус келген автоматтарлык бисте жандар соора болуп позимания кылдыртып бисти дери күнмеслер биске денерге камарыслар деп койгезебиз ичинде передовойда дененин военный полиция келгеш эттеп соккан товарга да бистер болуска солдаттар Россия Федерациясынын дайынча болдор өз кылдыр санатын көрөрбүз.
So they were sent from Russia, from Tuva Republic, into Ukraine, and now they're suddenly part of Donetsk People's Republic's army, which is a lesser army in the eyes of Russians. And they specifically state that they're not refuseniks, so they don't refuse to fight. They want to fight and they want to do their duty as put by the Putin. Such a weird thing to witness for me. And now some news from Russia. Russian Duma is discussing to introduce the death penalty as punishment for those who leave Russia to get away from the mobilization, or those who criticize Russia, because it's betrayal of the motherland. Sound familiar? They're going straight back to Stalin era. This comes from Andrei Kolesnik, a deputy of the State Duma. Another news from Russia, Russian strip clubs have reportedly suffered an impact from the mobilization, which has seen many of their customers sent to the war. A Kaliningrad erotic salon has responded to these issues by offering discounts to men who fight in the war. Now, my friends, I want to butcher 5 new Patreons. They are the people who support this channel and keep this channel going. And if you like this channel, Patreon is the best way to support, and who knows, you might hear your name being butchered the way you never imagined. Enrico M. Molina, Mark Tekeater, Andreu Dwiman, Zoe Olivia, Huang Le. Thank you to these Patreons. If you like my videos, subscribe to the channel, my friends, and until my next video, Slava Ukraini.